अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः, भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः, स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः, स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः, स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः, स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सहना भवतु, सहनौ भुनक्तु, सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै, तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Chant the seventh mantra. Na antah pragyam, na bahish pragyam, na ubhayatah pragyam, na pragyanaganam, na pragyam, na pragyam, adrishtam, avyavaharyam, agrahyam, alakshanam, achintyam, avyapadeshyam, ekatma pratyayasaram, prapancha upashamam, shantam, shivam, advaitam, chaturtham manyante, sa atma sa vikyeya. So in the last week's class, we were looking at how we view ourselves in this life, and how in the process of how we view ourselves, how we view the world at this transactional level, what's called Vyavaharika Satyam, Vyaharika Sat, meaning that we have, of course, two elements of this transaction. One is aham and the other one is idam, meaning I and the world are pretty much at the same level of reality. That means that our interrelationships are all connected together. For example, if I want to know something, then there is something to be known. So this is called jnata and jneyam. If I want to do something, then there is something to be done, something to go to, something to hold. So this is what's called karta and karma. And then when it comes to variations of ananda, meaning that if I want to enjoy or to get rid of my dukkha, then there are ways to do that. You can this is what is called bhokta. I becomes the bhokta, both negative and positive. And there is bhogya, means there is something in the world that corresponds to my level of enjoyership. And so this is how it happens. If I want to hear something, there must be something to be heard. Otherwise, I will not want to hear. Want to touch something, you see all the. So there is a certain interrelationships between aham and idam. Now, there are consequences of this adoption of my aham idam boundary line. There are consequences. Consequences means that I am dependent on the world. If there is nothing to enjoy, I cannot enjoy. So I have to get something to enjoy, like food even. But then there are consequences, because if the food is not right, then it has an effect on me. If there is no food, then I go hungry. So there is a certain interdependency, or dependency for the time being. Interdependency, no. But dependency of the aham and the idam. And so there are consequences that are, you know that there is a beginning, there is an end, there is diseases, there are changes, all kinds of things that happen between the aham and idam. So, our Advaita Shastra says that this way of assuming your identity as aham is not right. Not right. See, because if there is something very definite, like for example, this table is what would be called idam. And I have no confusion that this is different from me. This is idam, and it is separate from the aham. No problems. I deal with it in a very objective way. If the table is dirty, I clean it. There's no problem in my interaction. The problems in the interaction comes in when there is some confusion between aham and idam. See, this is interesting to see. As long as so this is what is called the pursuit of truth. That the truth is not ambiguous, it's unambiguous, very clear. And so here at the transactional level, the table and myself are not ambiguous. It is unambiguous. It's very clear. The ambiguity comes in when I mix aham and idam and I'm not able to separate them. So this is exactly what happens. This is, my hand is on the table. The table is also idam. My hand is also idam, or should be idam, because it fulfills the definition of idam. Idam means this. Idam means this in English. So this means something that you can objectify, and something that you can be free from objectification. For example, I see the table, and now I close my eyes and the table is gone. Or if I can walk away, the table is gone. In similar way, I see my hand, but if I close my eyes, the hand is not there. So this is clearly an idam. But the ambiguity comes in is because I take this idam to be aham. So this is a very interesting thing. In fact, the Shastra says that, please see that supposing you are eating a toast in the morning and you're toasting the bread, you're putting butter on it or cheese or whatever, and then you put it on the plate, it is an idam, right? Very clearly an idam, because it cannot move, it's inert, it's just lying there on a plate. A couple of minutes later, that toast has gone inside of you. And instead of becoming idam, it becomes aham. Aham means, idam means this, aham means I, me. And the opposite happens when you eliminate, you go to the bathroom to eliminate. Then a minute before, the remnants of the food was you. And a minute later, it becomes shit. So there is some interesting confusion, ambiguity between aham and idam when it comes to the body-mind, because it is not unambiguous. So whenever there is an ambiguity, whenever there is some confusion, it needs resolution. That means it is not true. So I think a couple of the people have told me that they like this example, that if you're looking at the table, if you're looking at a carpet, and it is unambiguous, it's a carpet. But suddenly, if the middle of the carpet, it turns into liquid, and then it becomes gas, then it becomes solid again, then it requires a certain viveka to find out what is happening. A minute ago it was a carpet, now it is water. So this is exactly what is happening. The aham and idam are all changeable and mixed up, becomes ambiguous, needs viveka. So here, Shastra says that, my dear student, what you should see is that at the transactional level, your aham and idam, the line between aham and idam are drawn wrongly. Wrongly. Why? Because what is your body and your mind are clearly idam. They fulfill all of the conditions of the definition of thisness. They fulfill all the conditions, and yet you call it aham. And the reason you do that is because you're drawing this line because of certain lack of inquiry. So as you know, this is a very famous statement, avicharita siddham dvaitam. This sense of confusion, duality, is because of lack of inquiry. If you look into it, you will find that there is some truth there which you are not able to grasp. So let us help you do that. So there it says that, really speaking, you need to redraw the line between aham and idam at a different place. Be truthful about it. Don't be confused. And that line between aham and idam should be drawn between aham as the Chaitana Vastu as the Sakshi, and the Idam is Achetana Vastu. It is inert. That is the right line. Excuse me. Between Aham and Idam. It is, and the way you should understand is that the Chaitana Vastu is one which is always Chaitana, means conscious, between effulgence. It is always effulgent. It never goes back and forth. That is the nature of the effulgence. And it is always a Sakshi. And anything that borrows this effulgence but is not its own is inert. You see, in the pursuit of truth, the line should be drawn not on something is moving. Even that's not the right line. So even inert things can move. Like for example, you can wind up a small toy that is done for young kids, and then you remove and you release it, and this toy keeps the spring keeps unloading, and the toy keeps moving. So you cannot call it Chaitana. It is Achetana. It is inert. It is Jada. So by this definition, anything which is made to move is not Chaitana. So similarly, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mind are made Chaitana by the reflection of Chaitana, by the absorption of Chaitana. Exactly what happens in the modern example of an electric appliance. So in that example, it's a beautiful example. The electricity is pure Chaitana in that example. Pure Chaitana. It has never become Achetana. But an electric appliance borrows the Chaitanatvam of the electricity and behaves as though it is Chaitana. So in summary, therefore, we say that if you wanted to remove the consequences of dependency on this world, which is what we all want to do, our quest is that we want to be unconditionally happy. We don't want to be conditionally happy. You know, this is what it is. You ask somebody, okay, I'm doing a survey. And can I ask you some questions? So this is okay, ask the questions. When do you want to be happy? You'll say, wait a second, repeat that again. This question number one is, do you want to be happy in the morning or in the afternoon? So you'll say, what kind of a survey is this? Okay, ask another question. Okay, do you want to be happy inside the house or outside the house? So you'll say, okay, please, I've had it. You go do this survey to somebody else. This is so ridiculous. We want to be happy. And the only way we can be happy is we discover that we are independently happy. Any kind of a dependency naturally means that that's not me. That means that I'm changing, coming and going, dependency. So therefore, in Shastra says, listen, if you understand the only way to be totally happy is not what you take yourself to be, but to be what you are. And if you draw this line correctly between the Sakshi, the Chetana Vastu that you are, the Atma, which is Aham. If you put Aham as just the Sakshi, and everything else is Idam, you are going to be very happy. So one question that comes up is, how do I do that? Okay, I can see what you're telling me, but is that possible? So it's interesting, last Tuesday, today is Saturday, last Tuesday, just this last Tuesday, one of my long-term friends, there's like 4 of us that lived in this area. This is like in the late 60s, together. We either went to college, I went to my MBA school with a couple of them, or worked with somebody, or just socially got together. There were 4 of us. And it was interesting that, of course, I have many friends, but out of them, these 4, who are all Indians, became very close. Our kids grew up together, our grandchildren, we all stayed in this area, and we were very, very close. One of them died last Tuesday. A gentleman by the name of Gulu Advani. I don't know if you know Gulu. It was interesting, in 1973, I was very happy to introduce, I met Swami Chinmayananji in 1973, and then invited him for some talks at one time in Stanford in 75. And in that talk, a number of people got to know Swamiji. I had known about him a couple of years sooner than that. And Gulu was one of those that got to know Swami Chinmayananji in 1975 and became such a devotee that he actually held one of the administrative office throughout his life. He was on the board of directors, a very important person in Chinmaya Mission, as were a couple of other people. So he passed away last Tuesday at the age of 89, and had the picture of Swamiji when this funeral was held, when there was a puja done, Antyeshti, the last samskara, and then after that he was cremated. And his son, Ajay, had called me and said, Vijay uncle, can you please give a eulogy to my dad? You are the right person to do so, and we won't have anybody else talk. And you kind of just talk a little bit about, not about your friend Gulu, because that will be done in a celebration of life later on, but just the overall journey of life and so on. So I said, I'll be happy to do that. So I did. And I looked at the garlanded picture of Swami Chinmayananji, which was, of course, very appropriate given that Gulu was a devotee of Swamiji. And some ideas came to my mind, and so I kind of fashioned my 10-minute talk on certain remembrances of Swami Chinmayananji. So I'll briefly describe it and see why is it relevant to what we are talking about. Excuse me. So I give one example that Swami Chinmayananda had. It's so interesting that my memory of people and names and so on and so forth is really fading very fast. But some things that made a deep impression on me, even they're like 50, 60 years old, are still fresh in my mind. Funny thing, really, how that happens. So a couple of those examples just came to my mind. One example was Swamiji saying that when you go on a long railroad journey, like in India, you have slow trains and very vast country and people travel a lot. When I was young, it was really funny how this would happen. I would think I was a teenager, 12, 13, 14, when I would travel alone. My father and mother will just put me on the train in Bihar, and I will go all the way to Amritsar for my schooling, where I lived with my grandparents. 36 hours, some huge journey. Lots of stations. And in between, there will be people coming on board. Other people will, sometimes you become friends with them. Then they would leave sometimes in the middle of the night. And so there people were going in and out, and so on. It is exactly the same situation in our life. In fact, if you think about it, Swami Akhandananda makes this point. He says, the earth is a very fast vehicle, going extremely fast. I think it is rotating at, if I remember correctly, 18,000 feet per second. It's rotating. You don't feel it because of the anugraha of Ishvara. But it is going so fast, it is unbelievable. So it's like not just an ordinary railroad, it's a very fast moving vehicle, rotating very quickly. On this vehicle, we ride on it. Just like a person, there is a train coming and you have 2 seconds, not 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and you immediately get on it, and then it starts moving again. Same thing happens. The moment we are born, we get on this earth. And we stay here for 60, 70, 80, 90 years, maybe sometimes less, sometimes more. And in between, we get lots of passengers that sometimes we befriend. Swami Akhandananda gives this very beautiful example. He says, there was this boy who was sitting there in the railway compartment, and pretty soon there was a girl who also boarded, and so they started talking. And the more they talked, the more they said they have so much in common with. And they were both young, like in the early 20s. And they said, wow, what a wonderful, both of them felt that. And they really kind of like fell in love. In the next 6 to 8 hours of they were being together, they shared some food and shared stories about their parents and so on. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, this girl went down into some station. And this boy opened his eyes and he says, "Where is she?" "She's gone." He felt so bad. My God, this was the girl of my dreams. And I never had it. I was thinking I will get a chance to talk to her and maybe we will get together. No, gone. She had her own life, he had his own life. And both Swami Chinmayananji and all the acharyas say life is exactly like that. So I gave that example, not in this much detail, but I gave this example that everyone is coming together. We know they are going to get separated. When they got separated, we don't know. It was so funny. In this cremation, many of our friends are now, including myself, are all old in our 80s. And generally the talk was, I am next. Because we've had about 4 or 5 people die during the last year. Even during the last year, they are now popping off. And so there was a lot of joke that I think I am next. And I made this observation. I said, Ishvara is very kind, because supposing he had a list, you have this list about, okay, it's your turn to go on such and such time. If that list was all available to us, you know what will happen? We'll get so miserable when we really should be enjoying and so on. But we are thinking, oh my gosh, I've got 6 more months to live, 5 more months to live, 4 more months to live. Oh my God, I'm going to be gone. And all my loved ones, my daughter, my son, and my wife, and my husband, what is going to happen? Our life will become miserable. Ishvara says, listen what? Just enjoy. Enjoy. And then one day it's all going to be separated. So this was one story that Swami Chinmayanand gave. So now the question is very interesting. Where are we all going? Where are we going? We have this example of a railroad that everybody is traveling. Somebody goes to station number 1, somebody goes to station number 2. But where are we going? So here, the second example by Swami Chinmayanand came to my mind, and I read that. That example is the following, and I think I have already talked to you about this, but let me recite it. Swami Chinmayanand says that in the springtime there is a kind of like a celebration that happens in the college students of India, where in the springtime they drink bhang. So, I've never had bhang, but I understand this is kind of like something like liquefied marijuana. So it's not very hard liquor, but it has an effect of changing your mind. You go into a kind of like LSD or something like this. So this is quite famous. So Swami Chinmayanand said there was this story where these young boys, they got together at somebody's home and just enjoyed themselves having bhang and so on. And most of them were just enjoying it. But this young boy whose home it was, when he drank the bhang, it didn't take well with him. He became delirious. And after a while, he just started to saying, "What's happening to me? oh my gosh, where am I? I don't like this. So everybody else said, no, 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 it's okay. It's just bhang. It will go away. He says, no, no, no. I just want to go home. So they all said, listen, you are already home. You just had some bhang and you're not looking at it the right way. He says, no, 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 no. I don't care what you tell me. Somebody please take me home right now. I don't want to be here. So finally they called his parents and said, sir, we were having a party at your home and your son has become delirious because of bhang. Please come and take him. I don't know what to do. Please come and take care of him. So they came, they put their arms around him, and they gave him some coffee and some other kind of things. And they said, listen, there's nothing wrong. You are already home, and you just lie here and just keep quiet. Everything is going to be okay. When the effect of the bhang moves off, you're going to be okay. That's what happened. So the crux of this story is, where are we going? And the answer to that is, we are not going anywhere. The reason we think we are going somewhere, because I wrongly associate myself with this body. And so therefore, I think I'm going to go somewhere. The body is going somewhere, and I think I'm also going there. This is exactly what happened. We are not going anywhere. Swami Akhandananda had this beautiful example. He said, when he was young, very young, so he was following some Mahatmas and so on. And one of the Mahatmas said, hey, I ask you a question. You are, supposing you're carrying on your hand a clay pot. And the clay pot has some water in it. You're carrying the clay pot. Okay? So here's my question. Is clay pot moving? So the answer is yes. Is the water in the clay pot also moving with the clay pot? And he said, yeah, it is moving. Is the space in the clay pot also moving? He said, yes, as a youngster. The Mahatma says, no. The space in the clay pot is not moving. The clay pot is moving in the space. If you move your hand in the space, are you displacing the space? In fact, it's interesting, the hand, where the hand is, there is no space. It looks like it. because it looks like a solid thing. There's no space there. This is a lack of viveka. Nothing disturbs the space. So therefore, the answer to the second question, where am I going, is you are not going anywhere. You cannot go even if you want to go. You can't even go. You are the consciousness in which the entire Jagat is. It's like the space in which everything is in the space. It is too subtle. You can say it's a higher level of reality. Nothing displaces it. So therefore, really speaking, you are not going anywhere. So what happens is you need to simply see that the feeling that I am limited needs to be resolved. That's it. Which is a wrong feeling. Excuse me a second. Not even a feeling. So this, when Swami Akhandananda was a youngster and this Mahatma was asking him to do this analysis, he felt that yes, the space in the pot is moving. Just like the water in the pot is moving and just like the pot itself is moving. When in fact, it is not knowing that space cannot move. So similarly, in Swami Chinmayananda's example, when the effect of the bhang goes away, you are already home. I remember Swami Chinmayananda saying, this is the meaning of Hari Om, Hari Om. He says it's not H-A-R-I-H, it's H-U-R-R-Y. Hurry home. Beautiful, I remember that example. So this is what needs to happen. Now, we're not convinced of that. Really? I'm not going anywhere. This is a very important thing that we will spend more time in explaining. How the whole world appears in me and goes away, but I remain the same. This needs to be understood. Anyway, we'll go into more details at the appropriate time. But in the meantime, just going back to the eulogy that I gave, I asked everyone, I'm sure you have a hard time believing this, that I'm not going anywhere. But I said, can I give you a small example of that? It's as follows. And when I had this idea in my mind, I didn't go through this in detail, but I'll give it to you. My idea was that you're not drawing the line between aham and idam properly. How so? So I gave this example. I said, Every human being, every living being consists of two things, two segments. One is idam and one is aham. One is drishya and one is drik. And the drik is completely independent of drishya. There is no interdependency. Really? Is that possible? I don't believe this. I mean, I didn't pause to ask them this question, but I'm sure that in everybody's mind there was this question, how is that possible? So then I proceeded to give the following example. I said, Ishvara gives us a very strong hint which says, see this in your life. How? How do I see this in my life? Think about this. When you are in deep sleep, sushupti avastha, there is no drishya, there is only drik. No drishya? How is that possible? Is there any body there? Not only is there no body, all of the problems of the body are also not there. If you got hurt the previous day and you have a pain somewhere, that pain will disappear. So that's just the physical part. More importantly, your mental issues. Supposing you had someone who close to you who had passed away, like Indra, Gulu's wife. Before she went to sleep, I'm sure she was very sorrowful, having lost her companion after all these years. But the moment she goes to sleep, because thoughts of relationships, as I said, bhokta, bhogya, jnata, gyeya, karta, karma, etc., all those kinds of relationships are all part of drishya. So this is exactly what it says, na antah pragyam, na bahash pragyam, na ubhayatav pragyam, na pragyana ghanam. Pragyana ghanam, as you've seen already, so the bahish pragya can be seen as physical drishya. Antah pragyam is mental drishya. So mental drishya means all of the thoughtful problems, that I am now a widow, thoughtful, not a physical thing, that I've lost my companion, thoughtful, or other problems in life that, fears and hopes and regrets, all these mental issues. This is all antah pragyam. And then the seventh mantra says, na pragyana ghanam. Prajnanaganam, I'm sure you know this, we've already gone through this, but just as a reminder, the Prajnanaganam is not the expression of thoughts and drishya, but the seed form of thoughts and drishya. Seed form. This is what is called, karana sharira. So you have a sthula sharira, you have a sukshma sharira. So the bahish prajna is the sthula sharira, antah pragyam is the sukshma sharira. So those are expressions that come up when you are awake or when you are dreaming. But they seem to disappear, but their seed form, bijavastha, is still there. Karanavastha is still there. Why? Because, how do we say that? Because the moment the nidra, the sushupti avastha, the sleep goes away, they all come back. All come back. So that means that they went into a seed form. It's a very amazing creation. How you have the changeover from the expression and the seed form every day. So the seed form, which has no form, we just call it seed form for the sake of saying it. But it has, just like for example, a seed of a tree has all the details in it, but you cannot see it. So similarly, the Prajnanaganam has the seed of the living being, but it is there. It is there in the deep sleep. So anyway, we'll come to that separately, but going back to that example, which I think, if you ever have a chance to talk on somebody's passing away, I suggest this is a good way to talk to them. Because you could tell people, you first tell everybody that, listen, Drik has no problems. All the problems are in Drishya. And so you're not going anywhere. So the people would ask, how is that possible? Well, here's the example given by Ishvara. Every night, the moment the drishya is gone, you are happy. The joy of deep sleep is unmatched. You are in fact one with Paramatma. You always are one with Paramatma. You're already home. But there is an effect of bhang. The Maya Shakti is like a bhang. It's like marijuana. This is what is called adhyaropa. Adhyaropa apavadabhyam nishprapancham prapanchate. Famous statement. You are okay the way you are as a Drik, but because of ignorance, you superimpose some things on top of that, like a cataract. Your eye is very healthy, no problems. If the eye was not healthy, then we've got problems. I don't know whether we can correct it. But if it's just a simple covering, a simple procedure, a relatively simple procedure, you remove it, and your eye which was already healthy, regains its health. Exactly the same situation. Anyway, I ended my talk by giving this example that you are already okay, and you don't need to go anywhere. And that there is no death for you. There is a death for your attachment to the body. Yes, there is an appearance of going somewhere, but there isn't any. I didn't get a chance to say this, but I thought about it later. This is a good thing to close this. If you ever have to give a eulogy, then it's a good way to close the talk on the eulogy, which is this, which is true. Shastra says there is very little difference between deep sleep and death. For all essential purposes, they are the same. So now we can ask, when you have a deep sleep and there is no Jagat, and because there is no Jagat, there is no Drishya, there is no Samsara. Samsara means I am limited, I have got problems, and I was born and I'm going to die. All these kinds of thoughts are not there. But do you disappear? Thoughts are not there, Drishya is not there, Samsara is not there, nothing but you are there. Do you disappear? No, I don't disappear. Even though I don't appear to be there, but I'm very much there because all those kinds of memories and so on, they all come back and I'm the same person. Okay? All right, good. This is what happens in death. Exactly that happens in death. Because you are, I am aware, and I love myself, Satchidananda. This truth about the Drik Swarupa, Sarupatvam, this nature of being, you cannot remove it. You cannot even tinker with it. Not possible. It is exactly like saying you cannot burn the Akasha. You cannot pollute it. You cannot, there's no night in the Akasha, there's no day. It is much more subtle than that. Similarly, there is no possibility of the aham going anywhere. So then what happens? What happens is that in the death, this so-called connection, the perceived connection between the deha and the buddhi and the indriyas has to be reassigned to some other, because the deha, the body, which is a collection of things. Deha is just a collection of these 5 elements: Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Jalam, and Prithvi. 5 Panchamahabhutas. That's what it is. And those 4 elements, they get back into them. When you burn the body or you bury it or whatever you want to do, eventually they go back to it. They came from the Jalam. The body is like, 95% water. So it just becomes water. Something goes into, it gets burnt and go back, becomes Prithvi. So that all goes away. Akasha it was not affected in the beginning and will never be affected, so it doesn't make any difference. And so the body will go back to itself, but as a functioning unit, because it was meant with your karmas to last a limited amount of time, has to be redone. And your Sukshma Sharira is not affected. It stays there as long as you want to use it. Indriyas are also changed because they are partially part of the body. So the diseases of the body, etc., they would also be redone. But now what happens is that the only difference between sleep and death is that in the sleep, your body is still functioning and you come back again and you do the same adhyaropa again. I am limited, I am not well, there's a problem with me, etc., etc. When there isn't actually, but you put it onto yourself and you use the same body as you did last night, as yesterday. Same relationship, same problems with people, same love with others, same thing. But in the death, you have to redefine it. You have to find a new mother and father to launch you. And based on your previous karma, you can take one of the 2 forms, either a woman or a man. This is what you often see people talking about it. That some woman will say, next life, I want to be a man. I don't want to have to do all this homework and take care of give birth to the children and so on. And there are some men who might feel, this is a good life. I had to work and I got so much blood pressure and this, look at my wife, she's so relaxed, she doesn't have to do anything. So they all have different ideas on what they want to be in their next life. So all those kinds of thoughts and karmas are all taken into account, and finally you find a new body. But you find a new body, same issues. So the essence of it is that you and I cannot go anywhere. We think we are going to go, but those thoughts are because of Bhranti, because of an erroneous interpretation of who I am. You're not drawing the line at the right way. If you do the aham and idam properly, then the idam always remains idam, and the aham always remains aham, and the 2 are never mixed up as it is when looking at my hand. So really speaking, even this is also idam. This is why when the body collapses, I feel I'm collapsing. Swami Akhadananda had this very beautiful example. He said, there was this, it is very good for those of us that have come from India and our families are still there, our parents, our grandparents, and so on. And now we have come all the way over to a different land, in a different country, and so far on the other side of it, so much separation and so on. So there's a lot of back and forth. So the example is that there was the mother of this boy who is living in, let's say, the United States. And he's gotten married and he's settled here. And he occasionally goes to see his parents, but doesn't live there anymore. So his father falls ill and is now really close to death. So his mother says, Beta, please come and see your dad. He is dying and he would love to see you. He would love to see you. So the son also says, okay, I will make arrangements very quickly. He gets on a plane and he goes to India and reaches his home, and he finds there is a lot of crying, and he knows that my father is dead. And his mother says, he was just holding my hand and he says, I wish I could see my son. And he just died like a few minutes ago. I'm so sorry you couldn't make it. So Swami Akhandananda says, so the son goes. It's very interesting how you, even in the case of this person who just, Gulu Advani who died, there's a looking at, he was, they've dressed up his body and so on, his face, and white beard and so on. He looked so, what happened? It looks so exactly what happens in this case of his father when he goes there. The father is there, he looks exactly the same, he's got face and hands and so on and so forth. But he's not there. Otherwise, how would he say that I'm so sorry I couldn't see my son? Because the body is still there. So I see them and so on and so forth. This is exactly what happened to my mom when I was told that she is in a hospital and she's got very severe pneumonia. I quickly got on the plane and I went there and I was about to touch her when the nurse said, you cannot do that because her whole blood has now been infected and we don't want anybody to be in touch with them. But she was alive for about an hour. She couldn't recognize me, but she was alive. And then she died. So that was very traumatic. But in the case of this boy, and in my case, when I saw Gulu Advani sitting there, so what it means is that there is someone who is not there. Where is he? you know what? Nothing happens to you. In fact, it is the same as you and I. It's the same Atma. He hasn't gone anywhere. He cannot go anywhere. But he is invisible. In fact, it is you. It is just you. So therefore, to close off this, the covering, the Adhyaropa on the Atma just needs to be removed. That's it. Just the understanding that Ghatakasha, a pot space, and the Mahakasha are one and the same. So this is the message of Vedanta, that the Jivatma and Paramatma are one and the same. The Atma and Brahman are one and the same. They cannot go anywhere. Cannot go anywhere. So one last thing here before we close the class. And again, I think that some of these things need to be repeated to finally become, you think about it, you think in your own mind, and slowly it starts to get deeper. Yes, this is true. Because in the beginning, these things look like, oh, really? I'm not sure. What about this? What about that? But once those doubts slowly go and you says, yes. So here, one thing I would close the class with, also a very important thing to be understood very clearly. What does the Shastra really do? What does Vedanta, the Advaita Vedanta, what does it do? So, we talked about this in some detail at the Sailorsburg retreat. Shastra has two meanings. One is called Shasanam and one is called Shamsanam. If you derive the word Shastra, so this is called Vyutpatti Artha. So the etymological meaning of Shastra has two different ones. One is Shasanam, one is Shamsanam. Shasanam means what to do. And doing means how do you lead your life in a way that you are ready for the second part. So in fact, in this eulogy, I also pointed out that in the Sanatana Dharma, which is Vedanta, there are 16 samskaras. And the samskaras begin even before conception, all the way up to the death of the body, which is called Antyeshti. So all these are samskaras. And what they are supposed to do is to prepare you for the understanding. This is called Shasanam. And so Karma Yoga and all of the bhakti and so on and so forth, what to do, how to do it, is all under shasanam. But then there is another part which is called shansanam. Shansanam needs to be understood. Under shansanam means nothing to do but to see things as they are. It simply reveals the fact that you are not a ghatakasha, you are a mahakasha. You are not just jivatma, you are actually paramatma. You're like nothing ever happens to you. There's no question of taking a birth, no question of dying. You cannot do it even if you wanted to. This is called shansanam. So this is what is called vastu tantram. You have to see the vastu that you are as you are. Not seeing yourself as you are creates problems. But to do is kartrutantram. So the kartrutantram, which is all of the things that you need to do, is to get ready for vastutantram. So in summary, all that Vedanta does is simply says, if you know exactly who you are, you will have no dukkha, no problems, no dependency. You will be an independent, happy, Ananda Swarupa. So anyway, we will, now I think we will, I've been promising this for the last few classes, but I really do think that this happens to happen because of the eulogy and some of the related aspects to that. But we will now, in the next class, take up the second part of the seventh mantra. Om Asato ma Satgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. All that Vedanta Yes, the meaning of Ram Nam Satya Hai is exactly that. That the Atma is Sat. And the name given is Rama or Krishna. That's just the name. But yes, it says the same thing. That's why it is chanted at the when the body is taken somewhere. All right. There's no other questions. We'll see you next.